NASA has a big problem because it takes 1,000 pounds of fuel to put 1 pound of cargo into orbit. However, June 7, 2011, Mr. Obama gave his plan to overcome that problem and said, "We have set a goal to let us ultimately get to Mars, and a good pit stop is an asteroid." NASA told the president they might be able to get water from asteroids for nuclear rocket engines. You see, NASA had a plan, and that agency was depending on water ice as propellant to be used in thermal nuclear rockets, a proven system developed in the mid-1960s, a nuclear water steam propulsion system, with thrust outputs which can exceed that of the space shuttle engines. All you need to do is inject the ice into the engine. NASA had already taken up this quest of finding water in space by looking for dirty snowballs made famous by the Harvard astronomer Fred Whipple, who developed a theory that comets were dirty snowballs. NASA thought they found the perfect target, so they sent a spacecraft to penetrate the comet Tempel 1. However, the copper impactor drilled a dry hole. NASA found only small traces of water on the surface of comet Tempel 1. NASA had bet millions of taxpayer dollars only to have Fred Whipple's dirty snowball theory break down. A fact confirmed by Harvard Smithsonian press release July 8, 2005. Deep Impact was a dust-up, sending NASA back to the drawing boards and past space missions, where it found that in 1994, the French spacecraft Clementine had showed that there was ice water deep in craters of the moon. So after refuting Clementine for 15 years, NASA sent L-Cross to investigate. Then NASA did a strange thing on September 24, 2009, on the L-Cross orbiter trip to the moon. The India Space Agency and NASA's orbiting submillimeter wave astronomy satellite data was released, data showing water vapor escaping over the moon's surface, water that the discredited dirty snowball theory cannot explain. NASA was confounded. Where did the moon's water ice come from? Consequently, on October 10, 2009, the last nail was put in that theory's coffin. When two of NASA's spacecraft went crashing into the craters at the moon's south pole. However, those impacts did as much damage as a bullet fired into a snowdrift. Whipple's dirty snowball theory failed because the dirty snowball comet would have left concentrated water ice, not flood. However, Professor Tolman of the University of Vienna, Austria, has a concept that will explain where that fluffy ice on the moon came. He wrote of an interplanetary ice storm, with ancient names, like the mighty serpent that brought the fatal winter from the Zoroastrians, Adad, from Gilgamesh, the Shnu, of the Brahmin, and the Azure dragon of the Chinese. Stories from around the world having one theme, the superstorm that appears to have included a chain of dozens of individual catastrophes, including earthquakes, geological deformations, vapor plume and tidal waves. Professor Napier of the Royal Edinburgh Observatory, Dr. Steele of Spaceguard Australia, and Professor P.I.C.E.R. of John Moores University are among the growing number of scientists who propose that an interplanetary ice storm hit Earth thousands of years ago. An interplanetary ice storm that explains the meltwater pulse anomalies. Even the physicist of the University of Iowa, Frank, confirmed the remnant of those superstorms and startled his colleagues with an explanation for tiny dark spots in satellite images of the upper atmosphere. The spots, said Frank, mark places where house-sized hailstones fly in from space 20 times a minute. These superstorms' existence have been expunged from the public's radar screens. Evidence from the historical model of Earth changes of the past, or meltwater pulse 1A, as it is known, was manifested as a sudden sea level rise about 16,000 years ago, with biological records of the instantaneous freezing of large animals such as mastodons, after which sea levels rose for the next 2,500 years, only to end with a 1,000-year sea level stagnation period, worldwide drought, and the meltwater pulse 1B, an event that began with a time stamp to the stars by stonemasons and the scribes who also wrote of the capture of the moon. Robert Bouvier found an alignment of 3 great pyramids to that time through the 3 stars of Orion's belt. Bouvier determined that the 3 great pyramids have the same relationship of the 3 stars in the belt of Orion as they were seen from Egypt 12,500 years ago. Even the colors of those stars match the great pyramids: white, red, and white. Strangely, even the lost temple site of Göbekli in Turkey is several of animal figures connected to the stars, as they were seen about 12,000 years ago. Figures which also reference the Orion star belt. However, it is the Semitic scrolls that best reference that superstorm meltwater pulse 1B and to the time 12,500 years ago. Those ancient scrolls were written in a self-correcting script and dated to start references and were commentaries on a superstorm at the time of the meltwater pulse 1B and the arrival of the moon. The strange thing is that there are some academics who are also inclined to that concept of the moon recent capture, such as J. Anderson, who states that the moon was formed independently of the Earth and later captured, presumably by a 3-body interaction, and these events were followed by the dissipation of the excess energy through tidal friction in a close encounter. Anderson is not alone. The study on lunar paleotides has shown that the moon could not have been formed in orbit around the Earth. Even articles on recent lunar atmosphere in the journal Nature found strong theoretical evidence of a considerable atmosphere on the moon during the greater part of its history. This fact was independently confirmed by the India Space Agency on September 24, 2009. Even the Apollo experiment that Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong placed on the moon confirmed the fact of recent capture of the moon. Simple mirrors used to measure the Earth-moon distance very precisely. Funny thing is that scientists have taken that data from those magic mirrors on the moon and ran that data back in time and found in just a few thousand years the moon's closeness would cause major gravitational or lunar tidal disasters on Earth, disasters that correspond to the geological record. However, when that data is ran further back in time, we would have had a collision with the moon. So the moon came from somewhere else, but where? Mars? Where else? Because the topography of Mars showed evidence of the missing moon. There are 2 tidal bulges, one on each side of the planet, caused by a large geosynchronous moon. However, Mars has no moon that is big enough to cause those bulges. Mars has only a couple very small moons. The second anomaly is a great amount of water erosion. However, there is no surface water to speak of. The third anomaly is the northern regions of Mars, which has recent volcanic activity. The fourth anomaly of the south shows an abundance of meteor craters, but much less to the north. Oddly, those Semitic scrolls from Qumran and legend from around the world reveal the reasons for those anomalies in Mars topography and where Mars' missing moon went. An abstract of those stories goes like this. Long ago, the planet Venus was in an elliptical orbit, which took it past the asteroid belt, where its gravitational field sucked in a large amount of space rocks. The path at that time that Venus took was above the north pole of Mars. Its close proximity caused a decompression of the atmosphere and pulled the water and air and its moon along within Venus' gravitational field. This gravitational force caused the planet's magma to surge to the north, causing great volcanic features to accumulate. As Venus came closer, Mars was pulled north, moving the northern half of Mars away from the meteor craters that are seen to the south, simultaneously leaving the moons Deimos and Phobos, named for the sons of the union of the Greek gods Mars and Venus. The proximity of Venus to Mars caused Venus to be turned upside down, causing Venus' rotation to go retrograde. Venus, even so, its speed caused it to be able to continue past after it pulled the moon, the atmosphere and oceans away from Mars. However, Venus was slowed down drastically. Venus pulled Mars' moon and atmosphere away. However, its speed did not allow for their capture. Therefore, the moon was left far behind like the sea anchor for Venus. The moon's gravity sucked up Mars' lost atmosphere and was stuck by Venus' meteor-filled tail. Because of the moon's slow rotation, one side received more cratering. The moon continued to drift toward the sun. However, This three-body interaction slowed Venus down just enough to allow it to be captured into orbit around the Sun. The Moon and its newly established atmosphere drifted between Mars and Earth. Then about 16,000 years ago there was an encounter with Earth and the Moon's water ice tail, causing the rise in sea level, which geologists call the meltwater pulse 1A, and the instant freezing of the mastodons, and was then followed by a 2,500 years of constant sea level rise, then a 1,000 years sea level stagnation and time of drought on planet Earth, a drought that corresponds to the account of God pronouncing a curse on the ground of the planet Earth. Then about 12,500 years ago, Earth captured that wandering moon and its ice water vapor trail, causing the melt water pulse 1B. The myths and parables of the past matched the scientific evidence of the melt water pulses and the star references of Noah and Job, dating their texts and establishing an explanation for the sudden rise in sea level of about 10,500 years before the Christian era. Even NASA's own missions and astrophysical evidence from throughout the inner solar system are pieces of the same puzzle, an assembled puzzle that explains where the moon got its water, evidence that has been mocked and expunged from the public's radar screen, evidence from the historical model that NASA hopes they can continue to ignore.